So I literally just got off the phone and had this conversation with somebody. So it's like, okay, I'm just gonna pop on and do a quick episode. But the thought of what should I wear to an interview? The amount of mistakes I've seen on this front is pretty mind blowing over the 20 years of being in the recruiting industry and employment services as a whole, especially career services. Um, you get in conversations. I had a buddy that was transitioning jobs at about 50. His wardrobe was a little bit out of date, and I'm like, hey, make sure you go to the store, get a new setup, you know, get a nice, clean looking outfit. We don't want to look like we don't want to look like the 70s here. And we had a laugh about it. But he went out and did it. Looked amazing. Didn't even spend that much money. And, he ended up getting a pretty good gig. But, he listened to that insight. Now, there's other people I'll say, hey, make sure you walk into an interview looking sharp. I mean, you don't need a tuxedo, but you do want to look clean. You want to make sure you're not wrinkled. You want to match, and they're like, oh, I don't want to go spend money on something I'm gonna wear one time. And but I'm like, but you went and spent a bunch of money on clothes for your Vegas trip that you haven't worn since. like, but that's our issue a lot of the time is we'll spend a bunch of money on an outfit for New Year's Eve that we wear one time, but you don't want to go spend money to make sure you got proper clothes to go nail an interview. And I think it's one of those things that, again, as I say often, you read a lot of stuff online, you see stuff on LinkedIn, and you're often getting insights from people that have never hired anybody or have never ran a business where they had to pay somebody or interview people. And yeah, it's one of those things that you can almost never go into an interview overdressed. We own a company that does manufacturing executive search, and you hear about even people that work on the shop floor coming into interviews in suits. Can you ever be overdressed? Yeah, I think it's possible. It's definitely it. The thing is, you never really know who you're interviewing with and what they want. But if you had a choice between showing up looking like you don't have your act together and then showing up like you take this serious, I usually lean on take this serious. Personally, I've had people come in to interviews looking like they just rolled out of bed. People that came in wearing literally flip flops and looking like they're ready to go to the beach. You can tell people that just didn't take their career very serious. And then when you're sitting across a table from someone, and it's like, well, do I want to spend, $3, $4, $5,000 a month on this person? They show up to the interview late. They look like they're living an unmanageable life. They don't have their act together. And if you're especially going to be in front of customers, that's a whole other issue. So I'm not saying go spend $1,000 on your outfit. I'm not saying you need to overdo it. I'm not saying you need a Armani suit, but you should look nice. Make sure your hair is done well. Get a good night's sleep. Make sure your clothes are not wrinkled. It's just one of those things that you want to land a good job. You want to come in looking as presentable as possible. And it's tough out there. No one ever sees it from the employer side. When we talk to our customers in the recruiting world, it's you hire people and then they don't work out, and then that's 3 months of salary and benefits is just out the window. And if you do that times 10 people, it ends up being a hell of a lot of money. And if you start to look at things from the employer side, then you learn how to play the game. And if you learn how to play the game, you start to win. So if you don't take yourself seriously, how do you expect a future employer to do that? I know. We got the tech world where people make $200,000 and they can, roll into work in Adidas flip flops and their hooded sweatshirts like Mark Zuckerberg did in the Social Network movie, and I'm sure some people get away with that. The problem is you see that on TV and then you try to get away with it, and then it doesn't work. And our advice here usually is we're trying to give you some insights to help you win. And let's not get our insights from movies or social media articles from people that's never hired anybody before. So, you try to, you can always ask HR what do you think the hiring manager is looking for. Talk to your recruiter, get some insights. You don't always have to go in blindsided. Sometimes they might not want you to come in super overdressed. Um, I think sometimes if you poke around and ask your recruiter, if you are talking to HR, they might tell you, "Hey, come in," and I'm a guy. I'm talking about suits, because it's easier for me to talk about that subject. But just as an example, they might say, "Hey, come in a suit, but don't wear a tie," for example. Tie's going to overdo it. It's going to be too stuffy. They might get the wrong image of you. These are little insights that you can gather just by asking HR, because you don't know. It's not your fault. How do you know what they want? You don't know these people. And I think it's okay to ask, especially if you're working with the recruiter. You can try to gather some data from there. I think this day and age, I'm not judging anybody if they come in with a tie on, for example. And I'm not judging them if they come in without a tie. At times, ties can seem stuffy. And then, the other guy that comes in, with his, collar pop looking like George Clooney, it's like, well, you don't know what vibe you're going to get. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions on that front. And it just depends where you're at. If you're a CFO, I think you know what you need to do. If you're a operations supervisor on a manufacturing shop floor, that one might be debatable. You come in a suit, and they might think you're too stuffy, or they might appreciate it, or they might think that you don't want to roll your sleeves up and get dirty. See, those are some gray areas you got to poke around about. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask. I also lean on, if you're going to show up looking like a bum versus overdoing it, I lean towards overdoing it. But don't be afraid to ask for insights. Don't be afraid to invest in yourself. This is your career. This is your job. This is your livelihood. This is how you pay your bills. You put food in your mouth. You take care of your family. Even on the resume services, people say it's expensive. And I'm like, you're going to spend $200 to $400 ish to, get a good resume done that could potentially help you get a better job, or just get a job at a better company, possibly get a pay raise that will lead to more pay raises. It seems like that ends up paying for itself. So, we'll spend money on vacations. We'll spend money on clothes for New Year's Eve. We'll spend $100 or $200 getting dinner and drinks, but we have a hard time buying clothes for an interview or investing in a resume. And I always say those investments, where you're investing in yourself, are usually the best ones. And hard to argue with that, but many people do. Anyways, if you have a career question, drop a comment below, and we will try to get you featured. Until then, we'll catch you on the next one.